Welcome to the National Black Leadership and Empowerment Series, Ask an Elder. Today, we will witness a conversation between Dickerson College current student president, Phil Butler, and the Reverend Steve Tillett, the first Black VP of American University Student Confederation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Butler, a senior and policy management major at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I'm also the student body president for the 2020-2021 school year. I want to welcome you to another episode of Ask an Elder, a very special one, if I might add, as I'm blessed to be joined by Reverend Stephen Andrew Tillett. Reverend Tillett was born in Washington, D.C., where he attended American University and accomplished many things. Of those things, he was the first Black vice president of the student government, charter member of the Kappa Chi chapter of the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and an inductee into the Omicron Delta Kappa Honor Society. He went on later to attend Howard University, receiving a Master's of Divinity degree. Following school, he served as a pastor to many churches throughout the DMV area, and eventually joined the Air National Guard, correct? The Air National Guard, later the Air Force, where he was commissioned as chaplain. I mean, the list goes on for the accomplishments and the things you've done in terms of service for the community. But I want to hear from you. How have you been? What led you down the path of spreading the word and then joining the military in doing so?
Okay, well, good afternoon first, and it's good to be here with my Kappa brother and student government president. That takes me back a long way. Back in, February of 1981, I was elected as the first African-American vice president of the Student Confederation. And then one of my sons, Don McKeechin, who's now a congressman from the 4th Congressional District of Virginia, he was elected as president. Wow. So they went from 0 to 2 real fast, and we had a couple of other brothers leading organizations on the yard. You know how we do. We right. Run things. So, right. But congratulations to you. I hope it's going well. So my intention, my plan was law school and politics. That was what I intended to do. And somewhere along the way, in the early 80s, the Lord kind of intervened. I graduated from American University in Washington in 1982. And then in the 83, 84 timeframe, my direction shifted from a law school and politics focus to sensing a call on my life to ministry, which was entirely unexpected. It wasn't anything I'd even thought about ever, not one time. Which is kind of funny to me, because when people that I went to college with and they heard about my going to seminary and being called into ministry, and they were like, Steve Tillett, who? Our Steve Tillett? Or my sons, JR, really? But that's what happened. And so started off at Howard University School of Divinity, earning my master's there. And then from January 1st, 1990 to the present, I've been serving as a pastor, first in DC for 6.5 years, in Baltimore for 8, and now Annapolis for the last 16 and counting.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so you talked about it, you said that you were once interested in law and politics. Right. Given the current climate, given the time that we're in an election year, do you remember your first time voting at all, and the feelings that you had surrounding it?
It was something I looked forward to. I was waiting. It's okay, I'm going to be 18. I get to vote. And so what year was that? 1978. And that was not a presidential election year, of course. It was probably a local election in Washington, D.C. And then, of course, in 1980, voting in that election, voting for Jimmy Carter over Ronald Reagan. Didn't go well. And frankly, that administration sort of launched us in the direction that we find ourselves now. Now, I say that understanding that Ronald Reagan would not recognize the Republican Party as it is today. He probably wouldn't even make it out of the primaries. Right. But be that as it may, that was my first. And I have voted ever since. And one of the things I always tell folks when I was serving as president of the Anne Arundel County branch, NAACP in Maryland, I would always tell people, there is no such thing as an off-year election. Anytime there's a vote, you need to vote, not just presidential years, because frankly, the presidential years, you're voting for the person that is absolutely the farthest from you,
Exactly.
as opposed to what is it, 2022 is going to be state legislature and governor. So we're in Annapolis county seat, the state capital for Maryland, and it's not impossible to walk down the street and run into the governor or lieutenant governor. You will run into your delegates or school board members or whatever at the store. These are the people that have a great impact on your life. I mean, school boards right now are deciding if and when to open schools up for in-person learning. That's a decision that's going to affect your children and by extension, your family if they come home with something. So anytime there's a vote, you need to show up.
Right, and I think that's a perfect message to put out there, because a lot of young people don't fully understand the impact of voting at a local level. And I think that when we think about young people voting, think about young Black men voting, what is a message that you would have for young Black men to get out and vote? Because a lot of us feel like our vote doesn't matter. That whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless of if we go out to the ballots or not.
So I would just ask young Black men, Black women, anybody a question, but especially brown people, us, Latinos. If your vote were not important, why would people be going to such great lengths to steal your vote from you? That we were granted the ability to vote through the Constitution, post-Civil War, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the Civil War era or post-Civil War era amendments to the Constitution that granted us vote, citizenship, etc. And so then they've been trying to take it ever since. My great-grandfather was a state legislator in North Carolina in the 70s, 1870s, State Senator George Allen Mebane, and he eventually was a candidate for Congress from North Carolina. He and one other African-American were running, and I think there was a white person running, and so ultimately he withdrew so that they would not split the votes. And the African-American, I think his name was Chatham or Cheatham, something like that, won and served for several terms. And then, of course, as you rolled into the 1900s, then all of the African-Americans who were in Congress were gone. And it was pretty much that way until I think like Adam Clayton Powell and a couple of folks like that got in the 1940s or 50s. And then it's been growing ever since. But we've been given the right to vote. And then every time you turn around, there are things done to steal, to diminish that capacity, that ability. Literacy tests, poll taxes, all kinds of things. And then just straight up intimidation. So for instance, when you hear the occupant saying, we're going to have poll watchers, what he basically means is that they're going to, quasi-deputize, these dudes walking around in fatigues with AR-15s over their shoulders to stand around polling places that are largely African-American or Latino, intending to intimidate. They don't want you to vote because if you vote, you can change things. Right. And so no one should ever believe. There are very few of elections that are determined by one vote, but there are a whole lot of elections that might be, say, one vote per county or one vote per precinct or something like that, that I think Michigan, Donald Trump won Michigan by 11,000 votes or something like that. So I'm sure there are 11,000 precincts or thereabouts in Michigan. And by the time if one additional person, two additional people had voted. And then Phil, this is another thing. You all were fortunate to have a presidential candidate and then a president in your lifetime that you were excited about, that you were proud of. Barack Obama, Barack and Michelle, and Malia and Sasha, our family in the White House. But understand that every election is not going to be one you're excited about, but you still need to vote. And so now this time we're voting between a 74-year-old man and a 77-year-old man who will be 78 on Inauguration Day. It's like, I'm not excited. Well, what you need to be excited about is the policies that they will bring to bear when they're sitting in the big chair.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen what Donald Trump has done. Just one example, because of Mitch McConnell and the way that he has manipulated things, he held up over 100 judicial appointments that could have been made by President Obama, hoping that a Republican would win in 2016.
Right.
Honestly, a Republican didn't win in 2016. Donald Trump lost. But because we have this slavery era holdover called the Electoral College, the Electoral College selected him, even though the people did not.
Right.
And so in the last 3.5 going on 4 years, he has made around 200 appointments to the federal judiciary. And my brother, none of them look like us.
At all.
We are 13% of the population. Latinos, I think, are like 15, 16% of the population. None of them look like us. That's a problem, because these are the people then who render rulings on everything, whether it's your capacity to sue the government of the state of Michigan or the city of Flint or whatever for the errors that were made in what water they were piping in that have since brought in amounts of lead and toxins to the citizens of Flint, or gerrymandering so that congressional districts and state legislative districts are contorted and packed in such a way. And I don't just put it on Republicans, Democrats do it too. Maryland is a Democratic state, and some judge talked about one of the congressional districts here looking like a broken-winged pterodactyl, you know? Yeah, so people just, you know, they do what they want. If you're in power, people, you do what you want, but you manipulate the process so that it favors you and your agenda over those of other folks.
Correct.
So it's important. And even if you're voting at the local level, Phil, a lot of times look down the ballot. So you're not just in 2 years in Maryland, you're not just voting for a new governor.
Right.
But you're voting for state legislators, you're voting for judges, because the governor can appoint judges in Maryland, circuit court judges. But then there is something in our state constitution that allows people to run for judge, because after you're appointed, then you have to stand election. And then if you are successful, then you're in for 15 years. But for communities that have been largely overlooked in many cases, they may just run. Right. Whether it was women, because it was mostly men on the bench, or brown people, because it was mostly white folk on the bench, that they would run. And if you win, then you get the 15 years. So that you have to look all the way down the ballot, from whoever's running for president to senator to governor to congressman, mayor, city council, school board, your prosecutors. If you remember the issues they had in Ferguson, Missouri, and that prosecutor who was just horrible to the citizens in a majority African-American city. So as a result of all of the things that happened there, they voted him out. So your prosecutors, your state's attorneys, your district attorneys, you vote for them. Your vote is important. And if it weren't, they would not be trying to steal it from you.
Correct. And I think that's perfect. I think that you summed basically the scope of it all up, because a lot of us aren't privy to this knowledge, or when we're learning it in school, we're just passing by so we can get the grades that we need to graduate, not realizing some of the impacts that it's going to have on us right now, but also later. We're just doing it and not really taking it in until it really affects us.
May I mention one other thing that has been on the docket for this year is census. Every 10 years, they do the census. And so there are people in Latino communities who I'm sure are nervous, because you've had the last 4 years, you know, Trump utilizing ICE, immigration forces to scare people, keep them out, put them out. And so they don't want to respond. But the census is taken every 10 years, in the years ending in 0. So April 1st was Census Day. And they want to know who was living in this domicile, this apartment, this house, in this city, county, state, etc., for the purpose of allocating federal dollars. And if you don't participate, you deprive your jurisdiction of the dollars they need to be able to support everything, whether it's hospitals, schools, road construction, everything. And then you'll have people feel to say, well, I don't want them in my business. They're not even asking you. Most of the things they're asking you, first of all, y'all put all your business on social media anyway. So it's already out there. The good, the bad, and the ugly is already out there. Second, they ask less questions than you respond to, I don't know, to get a cell phone, to get service on the internet, all other things that and we need your last four of your social, all that kind of thing, or your whole social. They don't even ask you that. They ask you your name, date of birth, where you were born, your level of education, who else is in the house, your ethnicity, and that's about it. And people are saying, well, I don't want to do it. It's not their business. Your business is already out there. Right. So what you need to do, because right now, since we've been dealing with the pandemic, they've extended the amount of time, I think at least through the end of October, that you can respond. You need to respond, because if you don't, you are taking literally thousands of dollars per person out of the coffers of your local jurisdiction if you don't participate. So you gotta, my high school government teacher, Mr. Keating, God rest his soul, he said one time, I won't say it quite the way he said it because I'm assuming this is family TV and I went to an all boys high school, so he came straight forward. But he basically said, if you don't vote, you lose your right to, and I'll say, complain.
Yep.
Okay? If you don't vote, you lose your right to complain. If you don't fill out the census, you then can't complain. Well, why are our resources here in, I don't know, Anne Arundel County not comparable with the resources in Montgomery County? Because Montgomery County had a 95% participation rate in the census and we had a 75%. We did it to ourselves. Right. You have to participate.
Right. Something I want to touch on is leadership. Okay. You've done and been in many leadership roles, and obviously we're in a time really unbeknownst to anyone. How has leading your congregation, but also just in general, what are some keys to leadership right now that you've experienced within yourself, but also just you think that young people who are leaders or in certain positions need to know?
The first thing everyone needs to understand who aspires to a position of leadership is very simple. It's not about you. When you are in a position of leadership, you are there either because you raised your hand and said, I'll do it, or somebody else saw some capacity and ability in you and they lifted up your name or voted for you so that you can act on their behalf and involve them in the process. Now, I'm just going to step back and then I'll come back to one of the points that I make when it comes to voting, Phil, is I'll tell people voting is a 4-step process. Everybody else talks about register and vote, and that's it. You register to vote, then you get educated on the issues and the candidates, then you vote, and then here it is. The fourth one is then you hold the people accountable that either you put into office or the people that you didn't put into office, because once they're in, they work for you whether you voted for them or not. That's something the occupant doesn't seem to really realize. It's like he's entirely focused on the people that support him and voted for him. It's like, dude, there are 330 million people here. Only, I don't know, 62 million voted for you. 66 almost 66 million voted for Hillary. And the rest didn't vote. But you're supposed to be president of all. So in a leadership capacity, number one, it's not about you. Number two, a term that we use in the church is we talk about servant leadership. So that even though I'm the pastor, I don't consider myself to be above the people. I am in a position of responsibility and authority to help lead and guide them as best I can according to God's word, but it's not about me. And so you try to be conscientious. You want to take time to listen. The Bible says, be slow to speak, quick to listen. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, but quick to listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we're supposed to be doing more listening.
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to people, you can find out where they're coming from, what their concerns and interests are. And then after you listen to them, I mean, you might, using your best judgment, determine that what they're asking for might not be what you can do, what should be done, but at least you've heard them.
Right.
But as often as possible, if what they want is something that is possible, is doable, is reasonable, makes good sense, is for the benefit of the largest number of people, that's what you want to do.
Right.
So we have to learn how to take ego out of it. That's not about me. And that's part of the issue that we're having in politics right now, is you have, and you know, this kind of crosses over into the lane of being more partisan, but that's because, frankly, the Republican Party right now is a party whose policy prescriptions do not meet the needs of a majority of the American people. Mm-hmm. Their interests align a lot more with the wealthy, mm-hmm. and with corporate interests, Wall Street, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so since they will not change their policy prescriptions to meet the needs of the people, they then instead try to gerrymander so that limits the influence of people's voting. And now, I don't know if you heard that in Texas yesterday, the governor, early voting started October 1st, and he said, all right, we're changing it. So instead of having drop-off boxes for people to hand in their mail-in ballots all over the state, we're going to have 1 per county. Texas is huge. There's some counties that are as large as a couple of states, a couple of other states in the country. And if you have people whose mobility is limited, they can't get there. What's the effect of that? To try and diminish the vote. Right. When you're in a position of leadership, your objective should be to meet the needs of the people as best you can, as conscientiously as you can. And when the next election comes, hopefully you will be rewarded with more time. If not, the chips fall where they may, you go on with your life, but you should never, ever think, this is my position. I'm the pastor at Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church, but that's not my church. I'm the pastor of it for a season. The church has been around since 1838, okay? So they've had a bunch of pastors since then. It's not my church. I'm the pastor mm-hmm. now. You're a member of Congress, in the White House, Senate, whatever, governor. Mm-hmm. That seat is on loan to you for the tenure of that particular election, and then you run for re-election to be deemed worthy to hold it again.
Right. So we got a little bit under 10 minutes left. I want to talk about 2 more things. One, your book. I see you have the shirt on. And you talk about what inspired you to write the book, and then sort of explain the relevance now. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but I read the description, and I know that right now it's probably.
I'm falling for the okie doke. How the lie of race continues to undermine our country. Mm-hmm. What inspired me to write it is, frankly, Phil, things need to make sense to me. Mm-hmm. And if I hear something that I know is not true, that doesn't make sense, then I have to question it. I have to come against it if necessary. So just on the whole topic of race, people would have us think that there are different races of people on the planet, mm-hmm. when in fact there is the human race, mm-hmm. that's la-di-da-di and everybody. And then within the human race, there are ethnicities. So that you don't have Black people who are Africoid and white people, so-called white, because most of them are not really white, and most of us aren't really Black either, who are Caucasoid, and then the Mongoloid, and et cetera. It's like, no, we're all human beings. 99.9% of our DNA is the same. So less than 0.1% of our DNA determines the differences, eye color, skin color, grade of hair, etc.
Athletic ability, because that's a big one.
No, there are plenty of white folk that got athletic skills too.
I'm saying that's my point. That's my point.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. White folk.
People think,
I'll tell you, my daughter ran track in college, mm-hmm. and high school and college, and we were at the Penn Relays in Philadelphia, and it's just relays all day long.
Yeah, I've been in Penn Relays.
And there was this track team with 4 white guys. And, some of the Black folks and the fans are chuckling, like, what are they doing out there? And the gun sounded, and those white boys took off, and they're like, oh. they
Uh-huh.
won, you know?
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
yes, exactly.
Yep.
So as a result of that lie being told and then being used as a wedge to divide people of similar interests and concerns solely based on skin color, led me to write this book. And so the first chapter, I talk about my own family history. The second chapter, I deal with the science of it, kind of laying the foundation. What do scientists say? What does the Human Genome Project say? They say that race is not based in science. It's a social concept, not based in science. And then the rest of the book just kind of goes through history, American history, and some biblical history, et cetera, to talk about how we are stronger when we are together,
Right.
and are as concerned with other people's needs and interests as our own. And so that's why I wrote the book, Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, because Okie Doke is nonsense, it's foolishness, it's a hustle, it's a scam.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that race is used, the social concept of race, but human ethnicity is used, is a scam. Correct. To the detriment of most of us,
right,
to the benefit of those that are getting paid.
Yep. And people don't understand the history of that. So I think that's important for them to, not to give you a plug, but go check that out. Go check that out.
So the website is www.stopfallingfortheokiedoke.com. Okiedoke spelled OKEYDOKE. Stopfallingfortheokiedoke.com. And that'll get you right to where you need to be if you're interested in the book.
That's great. And lastly, before we get out of here, I want to ask you, what gives you hope? What drives you, especially in times of like this, when some of us are in severe isolation, some of us are just lost, people are losing family members, we're in an ego-driven society, and we're really just lost as a whole. And so what gives you hope in times like this?
Well, honestly, the first layer of things that give me hope is you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I love you youngins, because y'all ain't having it. You'll call it like you see it. And for instance, the young people from Stoneman Douglas, I think the school is in Florida, where one of the number of mass shootings was, in school shootings, and that they got very active and started coming for the legislators in Florida who wanted to have a gun in every hand, and they were opposing it. That you all, and then with matters of ethnicity, a lot of y'all don't care nearly as much about that. You listen to each other's music. You know, you've gone to largely integrated schools, so you don't look at the other as something entirely unknown and foreign.
Right.
And then in issues of sexual identity and sexuality, y'all aren't getting all caught up on that either.
Mm-hmm.
What my son used to say, do you, you know, you do you, I'm going to do me, but do you, so that you all don't get caught up on that, because you don't have time. There's so many other more important things to focus on. So young people give me hope. I just need, again, as I said earlier, for you all to recognize that every election is not going to be one where you are thrilled with your options, but just have it in your mind, I got to make some choice here. Right. Because not voting potentially means that you are supporting the worst choice. Yep. So if it's like, well, I don't like this one, I really can't stand this one, well, then vote for the one you don't like rather than the one you can't stand. And then after you vote, as I said, you be an advocate in your own behalf and hold them accountable. And if they won't do what you need them to do, another election's coming, fire them and get somebody that you are excited about. Or how about this? You can run. So young people give me hope. There's some white people who, as a result of what happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and James Blake and John Crawford III and Tamir Rice, et cetera, are waking up. Some of our white brothers and sisters, our white cousins, because at the end of the day, we're all 30th to 50th cousins with everybody else on the planet, which means you got a cousin Barack and Michelle, and you also have cousin Donnie and Melania, but they're all in the family. We all cousins. Right. So that white people are starting to wake up, and you know, again, the cell phone has been a gift in that way, because it captures things And then it's like when people try to tell you and interpret what you saw, no, I know exactly what I saw. I saw that man with his knee in another man's neck, a man that he knew, by the way, and used to work with when they both worked as bouncers as security in a nightclub in Minneapolis. So former Officer Chauvin knew his name is not Blake, but Floyd, George Floyd. He knew him. Kneels on his neck and kills him.
Crazy.
And so people are starting to get more awake. And so if we, again, pull folks together across neighborhood lines, across income lines, across skin color lines, and just try to do what is right for the greatest number of people, that can result in the changes that we need. So don't give in to despair. Don't give up. There's a scripture, Galatians 3:26, I think it is. It said, no, I'm sorry, Galatians 6:9 or 6:10. You will reap the harvest at the proper time if you do not give up. We will reap the harvest at the proper time, but we can't quit. We can't give up. We can't say, I'm not voting this time. We can't. You have to participate. You got to be in the game, make the best choice. And then if you don't see the best choice, you become the best choice and run yourself.
I like that. If you don't see the best choice, you become the best choice. And that's a perfect way to end this out. So I appreciate you taking the time out. Give me some knowledge, give everyone some knowledge. Any last words that you want to say?
Just very proud of you and what you were doing with school and trying to broaden, get this message out to more and to your peers, because everybody needs it. Bronte said you had on a frat sweatshirt. I did. Oh, okay, there it is. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. That's what I'm talking about. Kappa Alpha Psi. Okay. What number were you? I
was the ace.
Ace of how many?
We had 8 on our line.
8. Okay. I'm 10 of 11. We were the Phoenix 11. Congressman McKeechin was right behind me. So I'm number 10.
That's crazy.
10 club's a lot smaller because, but right. As the ace, there's always an ace. But
exactly. Yeah. But I appreciate
it. Keep doing what you're doing, young blood. Handle your business. Speak the truth. Live the truth. And there will be enough who will come together, hear it, seeking that truth to make some positive changes.
This message has been brought to you by the National Black Leadership and Empowerment Project.